Peace. Welcome to the One Black Perch Publishing Channel, a space that serves as a resource for writers, sharing best tips and practices from a variety of books on the craft of writing, editing, and a range of other topics to challenge us creatively. But also it's our archive as we build a book publishing company in 2024. For readers and other supporters, you'll find updates on our book releases, submission periods to our literary journal, which are going on now actually, and new merch in our shop. In this video, though, I'm going to share some tips and advice for writing memoir that I came across while reading On Writing by William Zinsser. It's one of many on a long list of books that have been popular with writers over years and years. There's a lot of different types of books on writing. Some are genre specific, some are grammar or syntax focused, some are for building and reinforcing good writing habits regardless of genre or purpose. So this will be the first in a long series of basically note passing from books that encourage getting your stories written and published. Creating and sharing stories is one of the most simple but critical actions that we can commit, and because a single story can feel so full of detailed imagery and emotion, especially ones about our real lives, it's not always easy to see how you can translate that onto the page in a cohesive way. I wasn't familiar with a lot of the books that I'm covering on this channel, including this one, and when I searched for books on writing, this was one that came up over and over again. It's been reprinted a handful of times by the Quill imprint, I believe. The Quill imprint of HarperCollins over a few decades. But the book is broken into 4 sections. There's principles, methods, forms, and attitudes. And each one has insightful essays on their different aspects. And the attitude section had the most essays that I thought were helpful, but forms is where I found writing that is specifically for writing memoirs. In one of the last essays in the book entitled The Tyranny of the Final Product, the author tells the story of putting together a creative nonfiction writing class at the New School in New York. Decided that he would guide them by solely concentrating on people and places because he thought that it would cover the most of what an author may need to know. Those 2 areas do contain many components, so to write with the intention of illustrating the whole person instead of caricatures or tropes, and places as environments and settings. This is where your curiosity and intention comes into play. Now, obviously, the more that you know about a place and the people that you're writing about, the better the detail and chance for greater impact on your reader when you sit down and put it together. But if you're in some kind of a hurry or under a deadline or something, you might not want to hear that you have more research to do. But to give your words more weight, that's literally the assignment. I actually started reading the book on the history of Hyde Park, the neighborhood that I'm from in Chicago, not the Hyde Park in New York. But learning more about a place can change how you write about it, even if it's a place you're already familiar with. And there are things that you usually can't escape when learning about the history of a place, like migration, how people got to where they are, got to the place that you're talking about, family, architecture, weather, agriculture, a lot of things before you get to things like education or art or music. And you want everything that's hard to escape about your setting at your disposal when you're writing. Another suggestion from the Tyranny essay is tell a story in the form of a quest or a pilgrimage. Readers bearing their own associations will do some of the work for you. Stories have rises and falls no matter what the variation of them are or how you include them or how you put them together. So, you should be able to feel them along with the direction and pace of a story as you're reading it. And that's without adding elements of quests. But with a quest, you do get to inject a sense of ambition, making the reader a witness to someone striving for something. And that appeals to us as human beings, mirroring our core drives, which means that readers are more likely to see themselves in the people in your stories. We can all relate to striving for something that feels vital to us. And that's what I think that Zinsser meant when he says that the reader does some of the work for the writer. Just know that this is the kind of thing that you want to be thinking about prior to drafting. To complete the entire draft of a story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, and then have to go back to add elements that can alter an entire story's structure, and that sounds far more painful than just including it from the start. One of the pieces of advice given if you've already begun drafting your stories for memoirs to reread with an eye for themes that show up again and again. This way, if you're not exactly sure what your book is about yet, but you've already written some seemingly unrelated stories You can reread them for similarities or specific things. Just ask yourself, what shows up often? Sibling rivalry, loving relationships, spiritual struggles. Are there personality traits or emotions that dominate or mark the stories? A quote that I like that acknowledges how overwhelming writing your experiences can be and how it can feel like all the dates, the details, sequences of events, everything is jumbled into a ball. And he says the thing of the process is distilling a coherent narrative from a tangled mass. Tangled mass is a nice way to put it because it suggests that you're trying to organize something instead of feeling involved in creative act. Then the next step is to prioritize the themes that are the best representation of your intention. He calls this focus. Of all the possible stories that you might distill out of this one place, which one is your story? You can't go back and look at writing that you haven't done. So getting the writing out is actually what's most important. Then you can find the proper filters or through lines or themes. For example, if you're writing about like the formative years or your teen years, many of the topics typically broached are socially focused, like friendships, romantic partnerships, identity formation is belonging, but also often associated with adventurous streaks, risky or reckless behavior, rebellion. So, reread your stories and ask yourself what kind of things underlie them. See if there's more to say behind what you want to cover or backstory behind what's within what you've put together. Listener says that he'll read almost anybody's memoir primarily because it's such a deeply personal genre by nature. If you've read any good memoirs lately, feel free to put them in the comments. I keep one memoir in my reading rotation, so I might plug it in when I'm done with Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. I'm reading that currently. Last but not least, the essay on memoir has my favorite quote from the entire book. Memoir isn't the summary of a life, it's a window into a life. Just to extend his metaphor, if you think of your memoir as a photo album, it might help you section off periods of your life in a way that makes sense for you. For example, I had a pretty active childhood and spent a lot of time outside, so maybe emphasizing the outside kid experience is part of one of those many windows we view a story through. Just to recap, remember firstly that memoir is not the summary of a life, it is a window into a life. So, what pictures are you including in the album of your writing? Second, start with people and places. Reflect, research, and note your connections to the people and places you're writing about. Third, consider including elements of quest if possible. List the numerous themes that appear in your stories. Then prioritize the themes that are the best representation of your intention. You think about that before you started. Lastly, you can't improve your story until you generate it. Before you go though, hit the like button if you found this video helpful to your writing journey. Subscribe and hit the bell as we share our goings on and continue to share more resources for writers. Thanks for watching. Peace.